Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Catherine Orsborn, and this is my last shoulder-to-shoulder public conversation. As many of you are already aware, I'll be transitioning from shoulder to shoulder at the end of this month. This transition is definitely very bittersweet for me, as working with shoulder to shoulder and all of the communities that are involved with shoulder to shoulder has been an incredible highlight of my career and really of my life so far. I've been here for 7 years, and it's been an incredible journey with so many incredible committed partners. And I'm really excited for where shoulder to shoulder is going. Under the leadership of Nina Fernando. Many of you already know Nina through her work over the last 4 years as Shoulder to Shoulder's program director, but we thought this month's public conversation would be a great opportunity to reflect together on the past many years of work in this space, and for those in our network to get to know Nina better as she steps into the executive director role. So I just want to start this conversation by asking Nina to tell us about you. Who are you? What brings you to this work and motivates you in it? And what do you want people to know about you?
Hi, thank you. I first want to say, Catherine, how much I love and appreciate you and what you have been for shoulder to shoulder and just working with you. And it's truly bittersweet, as you said. We're gonna miss you, and we're also so happy for you and the new roles you'll take on in this larger field. And because of your leadership and Catherine, by the extension, our dedicated co-chairs, our executive committee, I have felt seen beyond just my job title or my perceived identities, but as a whole person. And I'm so appreciative of that. And so for me and my story, it's informed by the stories of my family. My mother originally immigrated to the United States from Sri Lanka with her parents and siblings in 1968. But years later, she returned to Sri Lanka. And in March of 1983, she met my father at a dance. And in July that same year, they witnessed the horrors of what would later be known as Black July, where Sri Lankan Tamils were targeted in a series of orchestrated acts of violence. And my parents, though they come from a Sri Lankan Catholic background, they saw their friends and their family and their neighbors attacked directly, houses burnt down, people killed and displaced. And so they decided to get married in September of that year and move to the United States and start their new life together. And that's where I eventually come in. I was born and raised and schooled in California. I had the privilege of growing up surrounded by extended family and community, friends, neighbors, family of other cultural and faith backgrounds. And I chose to study interreligious and intercultural engagement myself and music, exploring religion, faith, and the arts at the intersection of social change. And I have multidisciplinary degrees, both in undergrad and grad school from the Johnston Center for Integrative Studies at the University of Redlands and Claremont School of Theology. And that really informed kind of the next steps in my life. I worked as a multi-faith community organizer with a worker justice organization in Los Angeles. And then I lived and worked in Sri Lanka in 2016, looking at post-war interreligious conflict and coexistence. And then my husband Noel and we moved to DC in 2017. And if you remember the way that we felt as a nation at that time, and that's when I learned about shoulder to shoulder, and the opportunity opened up for me to join the team. So that's a little bit about where I came from and how I found myself at shoulder to shoulder. What about you, Catherine? What brought you to shoulder originally?
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Nina. And I love for I our team has gotten to know so many different aspects of you, including the music piece and the way that arts has been part of your sort of experience and training in how you think about religion and social change. And just I'm excited for people in the broader network to get to know that piece of you as well a bit more. So just thinking about how I landed at Shoulder to Shoulder. So I mean, the sort of long version of the story, which I'll try to make somewhat short, is I grew up in a fairly conservative Christian community in Kentucky. Lexington, Kentucky is where I was born and raised. I went to Christian school all my life, grew up in Christian and Missionary Alliance denomination. And so much of my exposure to people of other faith backgrounds was through sort of a missions lens in my evangelical upbringing. So I was very curious about other cultures, other religions as a kid. And I started every opportunity I had in like middle school and high school. I would go on the church, either mission trips or service trips, whatever sort of opportunity I could find. My first experience was at age 13. I went as a nanny with a family that was taking an intervarsity student trip to Guatemala. And I was 13 years old. I had my 14th birthday in Guatemala on a 6-week trip as the babysitter for the 7 kids between the parents who were taking this,
Wow.
this mission trip of college students. And so that's just, one example of my curiosity at an early age of just kind of being exposed to people of faiths and cultural backgrounds that were different from my own. And I think all of that kind of led me to decide in college to study in Egypt. And it was there that I really had a number of transformative experiences, really through the classes we were taking there, but also just the relationships. I spent a lot of time with Egyptian families and got to know people my own age in very similar sort of life moments as I was, but who had a very different sort of upbringing and perspective on the world and faith. And I saw so many commonalities there, as well as sort of learning to appreciate the differences in our backgrounds and upbringing. And I would say it was, in Egypt that I was challenged to think differently about other faiths. I had been, raised in sort of an American evangelical tradition with parents who were very, very open, absolutely, just in sort of an environment where there, was not necessarily that much exposure to learning from people of other faith backgrounds. And so that exposure, as well as examining my own Christianity and being in the Middle East in particular, and traveling through Syria and Lebanon and Palestine and Israel, and like understanding how people of Christian backgrounds in those places experienced and understood Christianity in ways that felt so different from how I had sort of learned it as an American evangelical Christian. And I remember one of our professors there asking us to think about, what is American about your Christianity and what's Christian about your Christianity? Like what's essential here, and what is the cultural context that I'm bringing into this? And that really, is something that has stuck with me so much in thinking about what pieces of my own faith were so fully shaped by being American. And now I think about the white Christian nationalist sort of things that seep into a Christian upbringing in this country, and that really has that experience in Egypt and in the Middle East really helped me to sort of look at my own sort of relationship to my faith. And it shifted a lot of things about that for me. My Christianity has changed because of that in many ways. And that all of that sort of led me into an academic route. I did my master's and my PhD at the University of Denver around religion and social change. And as I was sort of coming to the end of my PhD, I wanted to to figure out what it looks like for me to go into a less traditionally academic role, and to think about applying these pieces in my own, in sort of a more active context. And not to say that academia is not active. I think that's changed a lot over time, actually. But I was really interested in the nonprofit world and what that looked like. And so that sort of led me to Shoulder to Shoulder initially. And I guess one other thing I want to say about that is, while I was doing my PhD, I was focused on conflict that has been sort of framed in terms of religion in other people's contexts. And I really started to, during my PhD work, partly through the work I was doing with undergrads at University of Denver and some other things, really started to be challenged to turn that lens on my own context, on the US context. I was studying so-called religious conflicts in Lebanon and in Bosnia and in other places, and started to really feel that sort of challenge to turn that lens inward and on my own community and on my own country. And so that was another piece of sort of what led me into this work. So I'm curious, Nina, to hear from you a little bit more about how your identity and your understanding of your faith come into play with the work you do here at Shoulder to Shoulder.
Yeah, it's quite complex. You know, I come from a Catholic background, as I shared, and I actually worked as a cantor for years, leading song. But also that Catholic identity doesn't fully define me. You know, it's much more complex and complicated. I mentioned I come from a Sri Lankan Catholic family, and that is unique in and of itself. I'm a child of immigrants. My mother taught me about who we are, our identity, our ethnic background, our culture, our traditions through religion in many ways. And I studied world religions and interreligious and intercultural studies because I have this admiration and appreciation of the ritual, the tradition, the meaning making, the spiritual awareness, the grounding that religions can offer, the community, that religions can offer, just as I acknowledge how people can use religion as a means of empire, of colonization. That's why I'm Catholic, because my last name is Fernando. The Portuguese came to Sri Lanka and brought that with it. And so thinking about religion in this complex way has been a fascination of mine, and also a challenge within me on how I understand and reckon with my own identity, as well as appreciate it. And I see that religion can also be a force for change. It can be a motivator, a community organizer, like in the civil rights movement that was very much led by faith leaders. And that kind of led me and motivated me and inspired me to work as a multi-faith community organizer with worker and immigrant rights at CLU, and eventually here at Shoulder to Shoulder. And also at the same time, some of my closest friends and even myself at some points don't identify with religion. And I really believe that Shoulder to Shoulder and our work is for all of those people too. I think of how Shoulder to Shoulder, we engage faith leaders and faith communities. We're a multi-faith coalition. But I also think, people of faith doesn't have to just mean someone who believes in God or a divine power. It can also be someone who has faith in any capacity, and the possibility that things can be different from the way things are now. People who are filled with hope despite all of the awful and horrific things that we're facing as a society, people who believe in the possibility and potential of this country, of this nation, who love it still, even though all of the systemic and structures that we have put in place have hurt them. And faith can be connected to a religious tradition or a spiritual path, or it can be rooted in values of truth, like change and justice, and those things don't have to be mutually exclusive. And so this is actually a conversation I really enjoy thinking about. And it's a lot more complicated, I think it's something that we can be in discussion with as communities and as individuals in this work.
Yeah. Yeah, I love hearing your reflections on that, and just thinking about the complexity of all of our identities, that faith may or may not be, you know, a piece of that, and thinking about the ways in which communities of faith, you know, there's so many sort of complex ways that shows up for them as individuals and as communities, and it, you know, ties into race and ethnicity, and into, you know, life experience in a variety of different ways for different people, and really seeing people in this work as whole people, not just as, you know, quote unquote representatives of their faith communities, that the people we're engaging with and the institutions that we're engaging with are more complex than that. And I really appreciate that reflection and that perspective on it. And, you know, I think it's been interesting in the work at Shoulder to Shoulder. It was, you know, founded by denominations, most primarily faith denominations, looking to stand alongside their Muslim neighbors, and the institutions and the communities, the sort of social fabric of those faith communities have been such an essential part of our work at Shoulder to Shoulder. And over time, there's been so many people we've engaged with in this work and that have been attracted to this work, have come to our trainings, have been involved, who may loosely identify with a faith community or may have no faith affiliation at all. And it's been, I think, an interesting journey to continually figure out, like, what does that work look like in a broader sense, with people of different faith backgrounds and of no faith backgrounds working together to advance this vision of an America that is inclusive of everyone, and where everyone's free to sort of be who they are, without fear for their safety. Yeah, I think that's been an interesting sort of learning process at Shoulder to Shoulder too, is thinking about how we center and engage faith and religion, without being exclusive in that sense, and acknowledging the multiple sort of ways that people understand themselves and their communities in this space. One of the other things that I've learned a lot about here at Shoulder to Shoulder is just allyship. And even if that's the word we should be using, there's been all sorts of conversations within this space about, should we be talking about accompaniment more than we should be talking about allyship? And I've, you know, in some ways developed more questions than answers, to be honest, while here at Shoulder to Shoulder around that. But I think it's been an incredible sort of learning process to think deeply about what it actually looks like to come alongside others in a meaningful, substantial, and I guess like a way that involves deep integrity and love, for the people that you're coming alongside. And so, you know, Shoulder to Shoulder, as mentioned, was founded by primarily non-Muslim faith organizations, to step up and respond publicly and in solidarity with Muslim partners to the issue of rising anti-Muslim bigotry back in 2010 when it was founded. And the constant question for us has been, what does it look like to be a good ally in this space? We as people who are not Muslim, and I'm speaking for you and I on this conversation, need to own this issue, as one that is about the type of communities and the country we want to build. And at the same time as owning the issue as something that we need to be invested in deeply, following the lead of Muslim partners and of those directly impacted. And that can, of course, be challenging in practice, to do the work of listening closely to a multiplicity of voices. The Muslim community in the US does not speak with one single voice. And so it means listening to multiple voices, while also acting quickly sometimes in situations that sort of call for stepping up and taking action when it's needed. And so I think this, you know, one of the things I've latched onto here is that this means we have to have existing relationships. And if you're disconnected from impacted communities and are trying to both listen and act quickly, it's just not going to work. So those existing relationships are key to what it looks like to be able to be a good ally. And I think it's important to recognize there are going to be mistakes and missteps here. And we need to not allow that reality to keep us from acting, but, be willing to own our mistakes and to learn how to be better in this space. Nina, you've been such a helpful partner to me on thinking about this question of allyship or accompaniment. And I want to ask you to reflect on that a little bit here. You're someone who's not Muslim yourself, but you are directly impacted by anti-Muslim bias as someone who comes from a South Asian background. So how do you think about allyship in this space?
Yeah, I think that it's super intersectional. I growing up here in the United States, as a brown girl, I experienced moments of feeling excluded or discriminated against or judged because of the way I look or because of my family background. And those in my community have as well. But I also recognize that I have so much privilege as well. I was born and raised here. I speak English. I have an educational background. The list goes on. And as really succinctly put by a colleague who leads comprehensive allyship trainings around the country, we each one of us, we have marginal identities or marginalized identities, and we have privileged identities, and an allyship or being one that is an accompaniment or an accomplice, all of that allyship I'll use the word for this conversation, applies to our privileged identities. And so what's interesting for me now, a lot of the time when I talk about our work at Shoulder to Shoulder, when I'm going to meet new people in this work, there's an assumption that I am Muslim myself, or even Buddhist or Hindu, or just to name a few, which I don't mind at all. But at the same time, there's an assumption that to be Christian means you are white, and I think it's a limitation and totally, a short sight. It's short-sighted to think that because the Christian community is so diverse of many ethnic backgrounds, and those expressions of Christianity and understandings of Christianity are different and distinct. And I think that also gives insight into the American Muslim community and how diverse it is. The most racially and ethnically diverse religious community here in the United States. And a lot of folks don't know that. There's assumptions made about the Muslim community here in the United States as being somehow mono-ethnic or all of a certain background. But it's incredibly diverse. And one of the things that we often unpack at our Shoulder to Shoulder trainings is how often Muslims are racialized, and how racism is a core aspect to Islamophobia. And because of that, Islamophobia impacts other communities beyond just Muslims. Like you might remember, the first attack after September 11th was the murder of a Sikh man. There's Khalid Jabrara, who comes from an Orthodox Christian family, who is the target of anti-Muslim hate. And there are countless stories that show how Islamophobia and anti-Muslim bigotry is a moving target. And so it's quite a comprehensive, complex, intersectional, all the words, understanding of allyship in the work at Shoulder to Shoulder, and how I see myself in this work, as well as how I think of our communities in this work. And it's a challenge and an opportunity, and a constant kind of rethinking and negotiation. But shifting gears a little bit, I met you, Catherine, just 2 weeks before Oliver, your first baby, was born, and wanting to ask you, how has motherhood impacted and shaped your work at Shoulder to Shoulder?
Yeah. Yes, I remember being extremely pregnant when interviewing you. And, initially, you came onto the team to support the organization when I went on my first maternity leave. And I'm so grateful that that your role here has grown in that time to where it is. And yeah, I mean, for me, I had two kids while at Shoulder to Shoulder. So Oliver was born in 2017 and Josephine was born 2 years later in 2019. And it's impacted the work in a lot of ways. I think in some ways it's given me this sort of longer term view of what this work is about, in a deeper way, like in a way that I maybe had in my head at the beginning of the work, but really feel it more with my whole self. This sense that, this empathy for other partners wanting to make this country better for their kids, and me feeling so deeply invested in making this country the place that I want it to be for my kids and for your kids and for everyone we work with, like for this next generation that we're bringing into this world. And so in that way, it's sort of on mental level, an emotional level, shifted the work. But also, just thinking about like working as a mother in this space and actually, juggling the commitment between the commitment to my kids and spending time with them and being with them and mothering them, and what does that mean? What does that look like? And my desire, this desire to spend time with them, while also this deep commitment to this work and wanting to do this work. And of course, these things are so intertwined. And so, for me, it's looked like a lot of experimenting. And I've been grateful to be with a team that has, sort of made space for some of that experimenting. So, one example is taking both kids separately at different times to Abu Dhabi for work, for a conference that I was invited to attend and to speak at there. And, just was grateful for that.
To get baby passports. I just want to point that out.
Yes, they were like the cutest things I've ever seen in my life. Anybody who's gotten a baby passport, it's ridiculous trying to like get we took some of the photos at home, but then one time I for Josephine's, I think I did end up having to take her in because the photos I was taking weren't working, and took her into the passport at Rite Aid or Walgreens or somewhere like that, and holding her up so that my finger is in her passport picture because she couldn't hold her little head up herself. Anyway, just this experiment of bringing these kids into the work and saying, I want to be there, I want to show up. And I'm at a place in, I think both those trips came at the end of my maternity leaves with both of them, and so it was a time where I would just was not wanting to be apart from them, and so I was grateful for that opportunity to be able to bring them into the space. It also for me looked like taking Oliver. We shared an Airbnb at this conference in Toronto, and I
Parliament of World Religions.
Yes, exactly. The Parliament of World Religions. And so we shared this Airbnb, and I brought Oliver with me. And in both of these, or all three of these scenarios, it's for me involved learning to ask for and receive help from others. In both of these situations, there were people that I had relationships with through Shoulder to Shoulder that came alongside and were incredibly helpful. I remember, I don't know if Terry Kylo's on this, but in Toronto, he took Oliver for a walk while I talked on a panel. Well, you and I were together on a panel. He took Oliver out just in the stroller for a walk around the conference center. And in Abu Dhabi, some of our executive committee members took turns baby holding. And then lots of people I had just met took turns helping, and just sort of experimenting and figuring out what it looks like to not like fully compartmentalize my motherhood from my work. And then there are times where it has been something, and I'm grateful. Ben, my husband, was with me and Oliver on that first trip to Abu Dhabi, and I've had so many colleagues who have been incredibly supportive and helpful, and it's also involved a lot of like work and challenging decisions around childcare and time management, especially during COVID. I think so many working parents and working mothers in particular have felt this during COVID, trying to figure out what it looks like to balance all these pieces. And, I want to acknowledge that I have the privilege of paying for childcare in my life. And that balance of how much childcare do I pay for, how much do I try to integrate motherhood and working, and how much do I just say, right now I'm not working, I'm just mothering. And I think that's just going to be a constant from mothers I hear from that are far ahead of me in this journey. It's just a constant balance for working parents more generally. But I think, another piece of this that I've learned through this is that it's important for me to recognize that while I have a deep commitment and drive to be actively involved in this work, and I would say calling to be deeply involved in this work, I'm also not doing it alone. And so there are, it's not all on my shoulders to carry this forward. There are so many people that are involved in this work. And there are times that I've needed to take a step back. And I've been grateful for those who have been supportive in making some space for me to do that too, while working in parenting. And I think it's, sort of this constant dance of knowing when it's time to step forward a little bit more and step back. And sometimes that's within a week. And sometimes it's in a longer term view, but just recognizing that none of us are responsible solely for completing this work. If we can even think of it like that. And so I think that's been part of my learning as a mother in this is just recognizing when it's okay to step back and, to let go of maybe the ego of wanting to be sort of driving this work and saying there's just times where that's not going to be the case, and that's okay. And that's a beautiful thing in many ways. And so Nina, you also became a mother this last year, and I want to hear from you, how has that shaped the way that you think about this issue, and also the way that you think about like work and leadership more generally?
Sure. Yeah, I unexpectedly, motherhood and the transition into motherhood was really spiritual and quite deep for me, thinking about my story and how it is connected to my ancestors, and how now, in a new way, it's connected to the future generations, to Ayan, my baby, and the future. And it makes me think about the way that I am choosing to live my life and the work that I do in an intentional and meaningful way, and how to make sense of where we've come and where we're going in a deeper way, and just the beautiful kind of connection to life and death and new birth again. And I was not expecting it to be that deep and spiritual, but it is, and it's so beautiful to think about this work that way. And thinking about the chapters in my life and how that's connected to Ayan's story, and I think that's really beautiful. And I guess speaking of chapters, Catherine, like how do you think about this chapter in the last 7 years? What are the highlights? What are some of the things that stick out to you?
Yeah. There's lots of highlights. I could go on for a long time, but I'll just, pick a few. I think that, for me, the time traveling in the US and getting to be in local communities and learn from local communities has been one of the most inspiring pieces of this work. And the thing that has kept me going in this work really is to see what people are doing day in, day out, long-term at the local community level to build better communities has been so inspiring and just fun in many ways. As much as, it's hard to, talk about some aspects of this work as fun, I think that has been really one that there have been moments of real joy in the work, and seeing those deep relationships that are, long-term commitments. So a few pieces of this that sort of stand out. I think you and I took a trip with a couple other colleagues to Montana a few years back, and it was a synagogue hosting the training, and I think there were about 30 local folks there, and we had a great training and conversation with folks there on addressing anti-Muslim bias in a unique place where there actually was not a very sizable Muslim population at all. And yet there's a lot of anti-Muslim discrimination that comes there, and like anti-Muslim events, flyers, all sorts of things that they've grappled with as a community without having many local Muslim partners to help guide the work and anchor the work in ways that maybe other communities have. And so anyway, it was this really interesting engagement, and to see that many people show up and really care super deeply about this issue, primarily who were not Muslim, and just seeing that commitment. I think we've seen that in so many different communities around the US. But then the other unique piece about the Montana one was that the one of the pastors who had sort of helped convene this asked us if we wanted to go river rafting afterwards. And so I remember you and I ran over to find appropriate attire to river raft really quickly, because we had not prepared for that. And after we finished the training, we went and jumped in a raft with him and with a number of students from their local college ministry and just some other folks, and spent a few hours out on the river. And it was such a beautiful, incredible experience of just being able to experience life there in a way. And so that's one. I would say our Ramadan road trip a couple summers ago was an incredible experience. Literally driving in a car or in a SUV across the Southeast, and getting to see the diversity of the communities there, and just showing up in different cities and being able to experience locally organized, local led events around this, and how different they all felt, and just it was really, really a fun experience to have those moments of feeling connected to the everyday lives of people that we're working with, and to be invited into those spaces is really incredible. I'd say also, a highlight really is just seeing the swells of support as challenging as it's been. So, my tenure at Shoulder to Shoulder has spanned over the Trump era, and the lead up to that, and how much of that kind of, it's been in many ways defined by that in certain ways, and seeing at the same time that local deep commitment, as well as the swells of support, like we saw at the airport protests when the Muslim ban was first announced, and just seeing the commitment of people all across the country to finding ways to stand with their Muslim neighbors in the space has been so inspiring and encouraging over the last 7 years. So Nina, I want to ask, how are you feeling about becoming executive director?
Before I wanted to note, I see that Christina Warner has joined, and on one of the trips you were mentioning, we went to Canada for the Parliament of World Religions. We got to meet Christina Warner. Christina Warner was the executive director before Catherine, and that's connected to how I'm feeling stepping into this role. It's a mixture of feeling nervous and excited. In terms of the nervousness, I often wonder, who am I to be leading this work? I'm a woman of color. Also, I suffer as many women of color, suffer from the imposter complex, and having been socialized to feel that it's not, my place to step into this leadership role, but also, who am I if I don't step up in this role? And who am I if I keep pointing the finger outward and waiting and wanting someone else to step into this role? And I think that this is a really important move in my leadership development. And I'm excited about the challenge and the opportunity to learn from Christina's leadership, from your leadership, Catherine, which I have learned so much. And thinking about the challenge and opportunity to continue growing and deepening this work, and visioning and thinking creatively on how to build on the amazing work that has already been done, and how to deepen the longstanding relationships that have been made and signed into coalition, and how to sustain our organization and our work in different ways. And I think that there is so much to do there, and so much more, and it's incredibly it's an incredible accomplishment that our coalition exists, just as much as there is so much untapped potential, that we have as a coalition. There's many who are engaged, and there are many that have more to engage, and I'm excited to be a part of that. And so, yeah, I guess like it's a mixture of all these feelings, and wanting to continue the work that has already been done.
Yeah. Awesome. I love that Christina is here. Hi, Christina. It's great to have you here. And I remember coming to DC in 2014 for my week of mega training with Christina, where she, had all sorts of documents and notes. And I was just like scrolling down notes the entire time that she was talking, and, stepping in so green into the space. And it's, yeah, I think, in certain ways, I remember a feeling also of sort of this overwhelm, and at the same time, excitement and gratitude to Christina for all that she had done to build this, and to set sort of the course in so many ways. So we're continuing to build on what you did, Christina. So Nina, I want to ask you to speak a little bit more about, where you see opportunities for expanding or deepening this work in new ways, and what are you most excited to build going forward?
Gosh, there's so much, I think about, as I mentioned, it's incredible that we have this coalition in our organization, and it has so much potential for change. And I think it also relates to how I interact with religion, and how I see how religion can be this amazing force for change, and a motivator and a sustainer, and add insight and perspective into the work. And I think that it all comes down to, and we had a staff conversation a couple months ago, and it comes down to like a simple note that no one should be made to feel like they don't belong just for being who they are. And like, I know what that feels like, to be made to feel like I don't belong. And I'm sure everyone does in some capacity, knows what that feels like. And that is a core aspect to shoulder is to create this inclusive, pluralistic, multi space where we all belong, where we all can thrive. And I think of the image of shoulder to shoulder, in addition to the reference to Muslim prayer, and how Muslims pray shoulder to shoulder. That image is this sense of community, and a sense of belonging, of kind of rolling up our sleeves and getting to work together, shoulder to shoulder. And I look ahead, I think of the next decade of work as a new beginning and a new chapter in a number of ways. We were, for the past 10 years, under the fiscal sponsorship of the Islamic Society of North America. And now that has shifted to another founding coalition member to take a turn leading this work, and really thinking about what allyship, what accompaniment looks like in a deeper way, in that sense. I think we have this opportunity right now to, during this transition, to ask who we are and why we're here and what role we have to play in moving us toward our vision. There is no shoulder to shoulder without our coalition, without you and me, without our member denominations and our organizations who are connected to us. And then there are these countless groups and individuals that we have encountered, throughout the years, through our programming, who are not yet connected to us around the country, who should be and who will be, and the work of shoulder to shoulder, it's about recognizing our responsibility that we have to each other. It's about our commitment to making change on this issue of anti-Muslim discrimination, and how that connects to all the many issues we care about, and what it means to be in community in the many identities that we hold, as mothers, as neighbors, as people who love this restaurant or this food or this sports team or whatever the ways in which we are together. And when we value and when we celebrate our diversity and difference, when we recognize our interconnectedness with each other and the world, when we come together to challenge the unjust structures and systems that hold us back, from all of us having the potential to thrive and reaching our potential. And so, looking ahead and thinking about our work, and, I hope that we continue uplifting the great stories that we learn about, and sharing the models that folks have put together so that they can be replicated, that they can be heard, that we can encourage and deepen people's commitment to this work, and continue our programs, our trainings, our resources and presentations, and sharing, pointing people towards other resources that are already out there. I hope that we continue prompting and encouraging relationships and connections across difference, and advocating for resolutions and bills that move us forward little by little towards that vision. And there are so many people that are not yet there in this work. We have a lot of challenges, ahead with the ongoing systemic racial injustice that we're facing, the pandemic, just to name a few. There was a recent report that the United Nations put out that indicated worldwide Islamophobia has risen to epidemic proportions. A partner that we often work with and uplift, the Institute for Social Policy and Understanding, their data shows that anti-Muslim animus has risen, here in the US. But there are research-based strategies and best practices and case studies to help individuals and communities counter and dismantle Islamophobia. We aren't faced with this challenge without support, and that's what Shoulder to Shoulder is about. And there are so many people, there are so many partners, there are so many communities that are just ready and willing to learn, to grow, to make mistakes, to take risks, to create, to vision, build, connect, equip, mobilize, through our work at Shoulder to Shoulder and beyond. And I think that there's so much to do. And I'm just excited and humbled to be a part of that work and be a part of this community, and be a part of that vision. Yeah.
Awesome. I'm so excited, Nina, for the leadership that you're bringing to this, and the many ways that will just continue to emerge, and look in this space. I want to turn to a couple of questions from that we're getting in the chat. So I see Ibrahim from Rumi Forum is asking about, thinking about some are choosing to live their faith as individuals, not linked to any collectivity or congregation. So people who are sort of, I think we think about it as unchurched or unmastered. There's all sorts of ways that people talk about this, not people who don't have a faith affiliation, but who live out their faith in a way that is not directly connected to a community. And so he asks, what should be planned to bring the energy of these people as allies? I wonder if you have any initial thoughts on that, Nina, or reactions to that question.
Sure. I think it's kind of touching on some of what we talked about in the sense of what are our values? What kind of society do we wish to create, and what hopes and visions do we have? And that is a strong motivator for bringing people in on this issue, whether they are connected to a tradition or a community, a faith community, or not. And for those of us that maybe are connected to a religious community, how can we bring our communities along with us? What of our traditions, what of our sacred texts illuminate and motivate us in this work, and how can we bring that forward? And I think that can be in conversation with those that might not connect with a tradition, to say, how are you here? What motivates you? What are your values? And coming together to create a shared vision. And I think that's the beauty of the opportunity at Shoulder to Shoulder, and this country. Really, the vision of this country is that we can be who we are in all our many identities and many kind of backgrounds, and thrive. And the reality is, we haven't met those ideals yet. We haven't gotten there yet. The founding of this country has violence committed against Indigenous and Black communities, and continues on today. And it is very much interconnected with this issue of Islamophobia and anti-Muslim bigotry. And yet there are so many of us that are coming together to build that vision because we believe in it. And that is a part of what I mean by people of faith, people who believe in this vision.
Yeah, I love that. I remember before our faith over fear trainings, a few times us as a team all sort of workshopping, like, what do we mean by faith over fear? Have to mean that people are connected directly to a faith tradition or a faith community, or how do we think about that word faith in a broader, with a broader lens? And I think that those conversations have sort of helped us to think about all the people who are attracted to this work and attracted to this vision, who may not be directly connected to a congregation, for instance, and making space, making room for people to be at the table together, people who are connected deeply to a congregation or to a faith tradition, and those who aren't. And I feel like it's been beautiful to see that. I think we have seen that in the work. And so there's one last question I see here, and Cassandra, let us know if we're missing any others. But Catherine Laurie, who is our executive committee co-chair and with the ELCA, and has been such a huge support in this work, to me personally, to our team, and just to this work and this vision more broadly. So just want to give a shout out to Catherine. And her question is, what's one piece of advice both of you would give to those who are in transition? So I can start with for me, it's been sort of thinking about and embracing like the messiness of it and just taking one step at a time. I think that, in choosing to transition from shoulder to shoulder, there were a lot of pieces that sort of made me feel like it was time for me to pass the baton. And it's been bittersweet, as I said, because I'm not leaving shoulder to shoulder in a sense of wanting to throw in the towel at the organization. It was more of a bigger sense of what's next for both the organization and for me. And so being okay with a little bit of messiness and this sort of one foot forward at a time in transition. So lots of just deep centering, breathing, and figuring out what it looks like to continually sort of come back to yourself in a moment of a big transition. So Nina, I wonder if you have other thoughts on that for you.
Yeah, no, I feel like I have reflected on this notion of transition, or even just an in-between space, quite a bit. And I think that among while it is scary and unknown and can be intense and kind of ambiguous, limbo, all of that, it's also such an opportunity. And bridges are built in those in-between spaces. And a transition, there's this anticipation for what can become, what can be. And I think that anticipation and that bridge, can be a beautiful thing, and can help us kind of, I don't know, see potential for what can be, can help us kind of calm our fears and our nervousness and I'm literally telling myself this as I say it because I have that within me. I'm nervous just as much as I'm excited, and I think that there's a lot of potential for what's ahead, and I look to all of you, Catherine, our and our many partners, to be guides, to help kind of put those places in part of that bridge, to help us get there, because we can do it together, shoulder to shoulder. And also, it's possibility for what can be.
I love it. Yeah. Well, I want to bring this to a close today just by thanking you, Nina, for sharing so much of yourself here. And I'm so excited to see the ways that you will continue to shape this work. It's work that you have been shaping for the last 4 years in so many ways. And I'm excited to see what that will look like in the years ahead. And I just also want to thank everyone who has joined us today. And a special thank you to all of you who have joined us, who have helped shape my time at Shoulder to Shoulder and have taught me so much in this. And, this organization has never been about a single person or a single leader. It's always been about all of us working together, our staff team, our executive committee, our coalition partners through our steering committee, our community membership partners. It's been such a collaborative organization, and I'm excited to see that continue and to see the forms that it continues to take. And just want to say thank you so much to the folks joining us who have really shaped and taught me as I've learned in this work. So I'm looking forward to staying engaged with so many of you and in this work in different ways moving forward. And just want to give a thanks again to everyone for taking the time to join us. So
and also really quickly before we close, want to thank you, Catherine. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for the way that you've led this team, and specifically, how you've seen people and in all that they are, rather than just a compartmentalized kind of identity. And I think that's a really beautiful lesson that I have learned from you, and as well as just the way that you have led with grace, and we're going to miss you so much. Like, I have you on my favorites to call, and like, I'm going to keep that there, so that I can, I hope that's okay, where I can call you, and ask for your thoughts and insight, to this work looking ahead. And we're just so grateful for all that you have given to this organization and this work, and glad that you'll be close.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I am a forever partner for Shoulder to Shoulder moving forward. So even though I'm transitioning roles, just really grateful to continue to support and come alongside the work in whatever ways that looks like going forward. So thanks for those kind words. And thank you again to everyone for joining us. And we'll see you again soon in some other capacity. So
definitely.
Bye, everyone.